If I could give you 3 really simple steps when bridging that will make you much more accurate and pot a lot more balls, would you try it out? I've played this game for over 30 years to a very high standard, and I've helped hundreds of people already with my coaching. One of the first things that we always cover is your bridge hand, and it can have a huge impact on your overall standard. So today I'll cover off why it's important and the 3-step process to making it much better. We'll also look at some of the different variations, such as an open versus closed bridge, playing off a cushion, or playing a slow roll-up shot. So let's jump right into it. Let's start with the actual purpose of the bridge hand. A very simple view is to say it's there to help you make contact with a cue ball when you push your cue through. But it's much more important than that. It doesn't just help you make contact with a cue ball. To be more specific, it helps you make contact with the correct part of the cue ball. Now, that can mean the part of the cue ball you need to contact to get different types of spin, but again, it's even more precise than that. Think about any shot you've ever played. You line your cue up to make contact with a certain point of the cue ball, you draw your cue back, and then push it through, hoping that your technique is good enough to make contact with the part of the cue ball that you intended. At that point you're trying to make contact with is so small, and you need to be so accurate. Having a good bridge will allow you to hit that small spot more consistently. And this is really important, as we can see in this demonstration. I'm playing the same shot in both videos. On the left-hand video, I'm aiming exactly at the middle of the cue ball. And on the right-hand video, I'm aiming a tiny fraction off centre. And look at the difference it makes to the shot. That video on the right was designed to illustrate a shot in a frame where you might accidentally cue offline very slightly. Just the smallest amount can cause you to miss. And it doesn't matter how good a player you are, we will all cue offline sometimes. In fact, the vast majority of the times you see a professional miss, it's because they haven't made contact with the part of the cue ball that they intended to. However, having a good bridge will stop this from happening as much. Before I demonstrate a good bridging technique, I should say you'll probably have noticed already that I'm on a UK pool table. In the UK, the vast majority of people will use what's called an open bridge, and that applies to both pool and snooker. On the larger pool tables, especially in the US, I know there's a very large percentage of players use the closed bridge. I'll cover off why I think that is shortly, but for now, let's start these 3 steps to an awesome bridge. Oh, I've done that one. Every player will have a bridge that looks slightly different, and it's important to develop a style that you're comfortable with. But for me, the first 2 steps are key fundamentals that must be present in any open bridge. First is the grip. You want your bridge to be stable so your hand doesn't move about while you're cueing your shot. To make it stable, you want to spread your fingers and have them almost grip the cloth. You can see it's much harder for this bridge to move than this one. And as well as your fingers gripping the cloth, the fleshy part of your palm is also gripping it. And that's step 1 complete. On to step 2. It's slightly trickier, but not by much. The second important component is to create a secure channel for your cue to glide through using your thumb. And this is probably even more important than the grip. Remember that shot I missed because I cued slightly offline? Well, this is the main part of the bridge that stops that happening. What you want to do is lock your thumb against your index finger. This creates a channel for your cue to move through. As you can see, getting it tight against your finger will create this V-shaped groove that will hopefully keep your cue in a straight line. Getting your thumb more upright and closer to your index finger will narrow that groove and make it more secure. If you're a beginner, this will probably feel really strange, as it's quite an unnatural position for your thumb to be in, and it might actually take a bit of persuasion to get there. You see lots of beginners cueing with a very loose thumb like this. If you're one of them, don't worry, the more you play, the more stable you'll get that thumb. But guess what? That's step 2 complete already. Yes! If you only follow my advice on the first 2 steps, then you should become more accurate than you are just now. But there's a lot more to bridging than just that. So let's cover off a bit of the more advanced stuff now. What I find really interesting when it comes to bridging is how far from the cue ball you place your hand. I realise that might be the most boring thing anyone has ever said, and you're probably wondering what's even remotely interesting about that. Well, where you place your hand has a huge impact on the type of player you are. It can either make you a player who is very accurate and has tight cue ball control, or a player who's much more flamboyant. someone who's capable of playing quite entertaining shots and getting themselves out of trouble. I've been quite extreme with those examples, and obviously not everyone is either one type of player or the other. But the position of your bridge hand will definitely make you stronger in one of those skill sets. And that brings us on to step 3. Let's say on average, the distance between the cue ball and your fingers is roughly 6 inches. If you move your hand closer to the cue ball, the length of cue between your hand and the ball is reduced. What this does is give you a lot more control of the cue and in turn the cue ball too. You'll find you're less likely to accidentally cue offline, which makes you more accurate. And you'll probably notice you're more precise with your shorter positional shots, which can be really handy when you're having to be really accurate with position. In comparison, moving your hand further back increases the amount of backswing you can take. The advantage of this is that you should be able to generate much more power. By this, I don't just mean you can hit the ball harder, I mean you'll have more cue power, and so you'll be able to generate more action on the cue ball, whether that's backspin, topspin or side spin. There's no right or wrong answer as to where you position your bridge. There's obviously merits in both approaches. And there's also trade-offs. Moving your bridge closer will mean you can get less spin on the ball, and moving your bridge further away will increase the chance of you cueing offline. I measured my bridge earlier and I'm about 7 inches away from the cue ball, so I'm slightly longer than average.
That's what she said.
If I'm completely honest, I do lack a bit of accuracy that someone with a shorter bridge will have, but I just love playing shots with loads of spin on the cue ball. An important thing to keep in mind is that you're not tied to the same distance for your bridge all the time. If you watch your professionals closely, they'll quite often move closer to the cue ball when they're trying to be more accurate and play precise positional shots, and then further away when they need to generate more power on the cue ball. Okay, we've covered the 3 steps to getting a good bridge, but you will have to alter it multiple times during a frame. For example, I've mentioned playing with spin a few times, and to do that, you need to change the height of your bridge. So let's look at how to do that correctly. With most shots in pool, you want to keep your cue as flat as possible. You can see when we hit the centre of the cue ball, our cue is reasonably level. The only reason it's at a slight angle is because the height of the cushion makes us raise our backhand slightly. And when it comes to playing with topspin or backspin, it's also important to keep your cue as level as possible. If you play with backspin and simply raise your backarm, you'll be digging down on the cue ball and you may jump it. With a topspin shot, if you lower your backhand, then you might end up miscuing. So on these shots, rather than adjusting your backhand, you want to adjust your bridge hand instead, as that helps keep your cue as level as possible. For a backspin shot, simply flatten your hand. Your full palm should be in contact with the table, and this will mean that you can cue about 3/4 of the way down the cue ball, quite comfortably. This is about as far down as you'll ever want to play for a backspin shot. For a topspin shot, slide your fingers closer to your palm and it will elevate your whole hand. Again, this means that you can hit about 3/4 of the way up the cue ball, which is perfect for a topspin shot. I mentioned earlier there are 2 types of bridges, an open and a closed bridge. Where each is used seems to depend on either the geographical location of the player or on the type of pool being played. If we look at geography first, it could be that you tend to use a bridge based on what people round about you are using. In the UK, all you see on television and in clubs is people using an open bridge, and that's probably why I've gone down that route too. However, I would guess it's more likely the type of pool being played, and more specifically the equipment used, that has an influence on your bridge. I don't know this for certain, so if anyone does, please let me know in the comments. Let's start with the cue ball. In the UK, the cue ball is smaller than the object ball, and it's only 1 7/8 of an inch in diameter. As it's small, we tend to use fairly thin cues to help us generate spin on the ball. If you look at my cue, it's particularly thin at 7.5mm. And because it's so thin, it tends to taper pretty quickly. Compare that to the US, and I believe the balls are 2.25 inches in diameter, and cues range from about 11 to 30mm to cope with these bigger and heavier balls.
That's what she said.
So let's see why that different equipment might be better suited to different bridges. If we look at the open bridge first, and remember the small channel I created with my thumb, well, my UK cue fits in there nicely and there's little room for it to move around. If I put a thicker US style cue on an open bridge, you can see it's not as secure, so it's more likely that you will cue offline. Onto the closed bridge, you can see if I put my own cue in a closed bridge, there's quite a lot of room for it to manoeuvre, and so it would be more likely to move offline. And because UK cues taper quickly, you can see as I push the cue through, it gets thicker and actually jams in a closed bridge. A thicker, less tapered US cue can pass through a closed bridge much more easily and more securely. Okay, so I've just got one last area to cover, but before I do, can I just ask if you have liked this video, then just hit that like and subscribe button. It's down there somewhere. Now, time to get back to the video. I said earlier that it's actually quite common to vary your bridge during a game, so I just wanted to cover off a couple of examples of this. First up, let's look at playing a soft roll-up snooker. It can be quite easy to overhit this shot. A great tip to stop doing this is to bring your bridge right up to the cue ball and also bring your backhand further down the cue. This reduces the length of cue and gives you a lot more control of the pace, making this shot a lot easier. Another common reason to change your bridge is when you're near the cushion. This is the one time you quite often see a closed bridge in the UK. The reason for this is it means you can rest your cue flat on the table and get it more level, rather than it being quite high up with a normal bridge. To get this bridge correct, firstly keep your thumb straight and tuck it into your hand, and then move your cue up against it. You should then bring your index finger over the cue, and this locks it into place. Your cue might even run against your middle finger too, which will also help it keep moving in a straight line. One bridge I haven't mentioned yet is how to bridge over another ball. This is the most difficult bridge to get right, and because you're digging down on the cue ball, just cueing offline slightly will probably result in you missing by a long way. However, there are a couple of little tricks on how to cue straight, and this really brilliant tip on how to aim these shots. I played 50 shots without using these tricks and then 50 shots with them, and I potted 63% more using these simple tricks. To find out what these tricks are and to start potting more balls yourself, then you should check out this video now.